Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It is a pleasant, cool morning here in suburban Chicago, mid-September. The temperature is in the mid-50s Fahrenheit. I didn't feel like wearing a jacket, so I'm wearing a hat, which feels silly, but comfortable. I may end up taking it off. We'll see how it goes. Well, I hope that you are having a pleasant September. Living in the Midwest, September and October are excellent months. The weather gets nice and crisp. The leaves change colors. It's a lovely time. We don't have snow yet. It's great. Well, today I am returning to form because I've played 3 new games. That means it's time for a Shootin' from the Hip triple shot, Button Shy edition. So a couple weeks ago, actually just before the changeover from August to September, I got in a shipment of Jason Tagmeyer games, or games from Jason Tagmeyer's company, Button Shy Games. Particularly 3 games that I ordered in the most recent Kickstarter they did. I got a copy of Tussie Mussie, I got a copy of Sprawlopolis, and I got a copy of the Skulls of Sedlec. Skulls of Sedlec was the new one that they were just releasing. All 3 of these games came with expansions, so each one has a little bit of extra flavor, and they all come in those little wallets that make for interesting play. This is the 4th, that's the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Button Shy games that I purchased. I also, a while back, got Daniel Solis's space game that I can't remember the name of. I want to say Pulse, but that's not right. It's that one's a deduction game on 18 cards. For those of you who've never played a Button Shy game, their whole gimmick is they always make games with using just 18 cards, and then they come in this little wallet, and sometimes they'll do a couple little expansions that add some more cards to the game, but the whole idea is they print in very small sizes, which make for fun gaming, frankly. And the whole idea is the games are very portable. I was talking with a friend of mine, one of the managers of the local game shop that I visit, and he expressed that I mentioned that I'd played a couple of those lately, and he mentioned that, or he said that whenever he encounters an 18-card game, after he plays it, his first question, or the meter against which he places all of these games, is how does it compare to Love Letter? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to give the Love Letter comparison at the end of the episode. I'll put Love Letter at a 4 out of 5 stars because it's pretty great. All right, so the first game I want to talk about is Tussie Mussie. This game made a fair amount of splash last year when it came out. I think they did the Kickstarter for it in like August of 2019, and it made a fair amount of splash because it was designed by Elizabeth Hargraves, the designer of Wingspan and now Mariposas. So a hot up-and-coming designer. Also, it had a theme that's a little less common, which is the exchanging of flower arrangements, which is part of the Victorian courting tradition. Each flower had its own meaning, and that's kind of the theme. Tussie Mussie is a set collection game with a interesting sort of I split you choose mechanism. The way it works is on your turn, you're going to draw 2 cards, and you're going to pick one of them to play. Is it that you draw 2, or do you have 3 and you get to pick 2 of them? I think you just draw 2. Obviously, I played this a week ago, so I should remember, but I have the basic idea. So you're going to draw 2 cards, and you give them to, or you offer them to the person on your left. When you do that, you can either give them 1 card face up and 1 card face, or you put 1 card face up, 1 card face down. And then they get to pick. Do they take the face up card you've offered, or they take the face down card. Whichever card they don't take, you take. The 2 cards are then added to your tableau, 1 card to theirs and 1 card to yours, and you leave it face up or face down. You're allowed to look at it, but you have to leave it in the orientation it was when you got it. This goes around the table in various changes of order until everybody has gotten 4 cards. So you do 2 exchanges, or you do 4 exchanges, I guess. Once you have 4 cards, then the round is over and everyone scores. So there are maybe 6 different kinds of cards, or 6 different kinds of flowers, and each of the 18 cards has a different arrangement of scoring mechanisms. There's some that have points, there's some that gets points for being next to other cards, there's some that gets points based on other cards that have points, or cards that based on color. It's a cute little game with an interesting bluffing mechanism because you're constantly sort of keeping an eye on what the other people have, and trying to imagine why they would choose to give you a card face up or face down. The art on it is nice. There's great flavor. Each card has a little phrase on it that indicates what those flowers mean. As I said, in the Victorian era, the flowers that were added as part of these flower arrangements would have had a particular meaning. And so if I gave you a particular flower, it might mean I'm mad at you, or I'm in love with you, or whatever. And the game encourages you to read those out loud when you offer them. Cute little filler is the description I'd have here. It's a fun game. Definitely not a game I would turn down playing when people offered. It felt a little random. You don't have very much information to go on between what your opponent is giving you face up and what they're offering face down. So I guess over time you have to kind of try to balance which thing is there. There's also a lot of luck involved, but that's true of most of these small games. You know, when I think about a comparison to Love Letter, there's a lot of luck involved in a love letter. If you pick the princess on the first round, your odds of being able to survive that are pretty poor. And you don't really get to choose which card you pick. We only played it the once. I mean, you play 3 rounds, so we basically played 3 of the rounds of the game. So I've gotten a taste of it. From that said, I certainly would happily play it again, and will do so. It fits the pocket game that you could play in 20 minutes while you're waiting for your food at a diner. Not that we're going to diners anytime soon. But overall, enjoyable. Not as good as Love Letter. So I'd say, at least on my first play. So 3 out of 4. Or 3.5 out of 4. Close, I think. Has potential. But not quite as good. That's Tussie Mussie by Elizabeth Hargrave, or Hargraves. I can't remember. I think it's Hargrave. And Button Shy Games. All right, on to our second game from this Button Shy trilogy, and that is Sprawlopolis. Sprawlopolis is a solo or cooperative game, again, from Button Shy, made of 18 cards. The way this one works is that at the beginning of the game, you shuffle the cards up and randomly draw 3 of them to be the scoring conditions. Those scoring conditions have requirements for building a city on them, different arrangements of 4 different kinds of city blocks, and they also have a number on them. That number, from 1 to 18, when added together with the other 2 numbers on the other cards that you drew, becomes your scoring target. Sprawlopolis is a cooperative game. You either play solo or with another player, or multiple other players, I guess, and your goal is to build the city in a way that scores at least a number of points equal to the total of those 3 scoring conditions. So you shuffle your 18 cards, you deal out 3 cards face up, or with the scoring side up, and then the rest of the cards become the cards that you use to play the game. It's an excellent use of the resources on the card, or of the 18 card limitation. You have 18 different scoring conditions, and then 15 of those cards become the cards used to build the blocks. The game has a really interesting mechanism where every card has on it a couple, 1 or 2 segments of road. And the rule is if two segments of when you play your cards, you can overlap them a little bit, you can put them next to each other, or you can, and you don't have to connect the roads. However, at the end of the game, for each separate road that you have, you lose a point. So if you connect all the roads, if you connect roads as you're playing cards, then you end up with very few roads, and you end up scoring, not getting these big penalties. But it's very hard to get big blocks of these like-minded or similar colored city areas together. And it's hard to meet the scoring conditions. So I really liked our first play of Sprawlopolis. I played with my wife, 2-player. I feel like it is probably better as a solo game. I'm looking forward to trying it that way. Because it is a cooperative game, but each player is taking their own turns, you either talk a lot, in which case then you do run into the potential of the alpha player problem, or you don't talk enough and you're working at cross purposes with your partners. This is, of course, the problem of any cooperative game, and could just be resolved by not worrying about that. But generally, I think it's interesting to do a co-op game where you have different things to contribute. And in this game, there just aren't different things to contribute. You're all doing the same thing. And that's fine too. There are plenty of good games that way. In fact, the cooperative game that my design partner and I, Rob, are working on is that way. You all have the same thing to contribute. Although, one of the things we're working on in development is possibly having different roles. Sprawlopolis, an interesting game. Better than Love Letter? No. As good as Tussie Mussie? Sure. So I'd say 3.5. Another excellent game. That's Sprawlopolis. I'm also looking forward to it. Came with a couple expansions, one of which is called Rectar, a 1-card disaster, and it's a huge lizard that apparently comes in and wrecks stuff in the city. I'm excited to see how that works. So that's Sprawlopolis. And the third game that I got in my Button Shy pack is the Skulls of Sedlec. Now, Sedlec Ossuary is a church in the Czech Republic that my wife and I saw when we took a trip over there in 2014. The Sedlec Ossuary is a church that was occupied or used during the medieval era, and during that time a whole bunch of people died of the plague, and the people who worked at the church used their skeletons to build elaborate religious formations. So when you go to the church, there's basically bones everywhere, attached to all the walls, attached to the ceiling. They have a chandelier of bones. There's these giant artistic piles of skulls. It's super creepy and super interesting and beautiful and horrible at the same time. And so in this game, you are trying to build one of these pyramids. That perhaps the most distinctive thing about the Sedlec Ossuary are these large pyramids of skulls that they built, these big towers of skulls. And so that's what you're trying to build in this game. There are 6 piles of cards, and each card has 2 skulls on it of 6 different types of skull. There's prisoners and priests and peasants and royalty and lovers. Maybe there's 5 types. I think I've just named them all. What you're trying to do is you're building a triangle of skulls. If you're playing a 3 or 4 player game, you're building a pyramid of a base of 3, 3, 2, 1. And if you're playing a 2 player game, you're building a pyramid of 4, 3, 2. The way it works is that you'll have a couple different actions that allow you to acquire or play cards, and you have to build your pyramid sort of logically. So in order to put a card on the next level, you have to have 2 cards in the spots below it. Pretty standard pyramid-shaped card tableau building. At the end of the game, each different type of skull scores in a different way depending on the other skulls around it. So, like for instance, the royalty skulls earn a point for every royal or peasant under them on a lower level. And the priest skulls score a point for being on. Each level that has a priest skull on it scores points. The prisoners score points by being by the priests, and so on. Reminds me a little bit in the scoring conditions of something like Between Two Cities. It's less complicated than that, only 18 cards after all, but interesting nonetheless. I think of the 3 games, this is probably the one I found most interesting on the first play. You have the most control over what you're doing, but you still have to interact with your opponents. The multiple scoring conditions is pretty interesting, and you have ways to control which ones you're using. There's still some luck, but 18 cards. Of the 3, I'd say, like I said, Skulls of Sedlec was my favorite, but none of the 3 is as good as Love Letter, to my money. That said, I really enjoy having these, and I'll look forward to playing them some more. They're going to be great take-along games for short play. The one game that I did not get that I think probably will be part of my next batch of Button Shy games when I buy them at some future point would be Circle the Wagons. I've heard many good things about this game, and that's probably the only one of the Button Shy games that I've heard much conversation about, other than Sprawlopolis and Tussie Mussie. And then Skulls of Sedlec, which, I frankly got for sentimental reasons, because we've been to the Sedlec ossuary. I will post a couple pictures from the Sedlec ossuary on the show notes for this episode. So if you want to see what it looks like, you could always just Google Sedlec ossuary, but I will put some pictures up. Oh, so one more thing I wanted to mention. While I was talking about Tussie Mussie, it occurred to me that the mechanism in Tussie Mussie of taking 2 cards, offering them to another player and having them accept one reminded me of something, and I just now figured out what it was. There's a game from Charles Ward that I helped with the rule book on, and he sent me a copy as a thanks, and I did review it on the podcast quite a while ago. It's called Blood and Fortune. It is a tableau building game that centers around this same mechanism of offering cards. In that game, you offer cards to people, and they either take one or the other, and then you get the one they don't take. And it's about building your tableau and getting influence with other people, so putting influence in their tableau and trying not to get too much of their influence in your tableau, and so on. It was an excellent little game, a little complicated for what it was. It was a little hard to wrap your head around how it worked, but interesting nonetheless, and some cool graphic design on that. So if you ever get a chance to play Blood and Fortune, I would recommend it. Like I said, I was reminded of Tussie Mussie when I was playing it. So what Button Shy games have you played? Have you played any of these 18 card mini games or micro games? What are some of the ones you've enjoyed? I know Button Shy just released a thing where they have an 18 card game where all 18 cards are the same. I don't know how that will work. It'll be interesting to see whether it's fun or not, or how it's fun. I would be interested to see what that is. In the meantime, I look forward to hearing from you over on Board Game Geek Guild 3269. Your comments about mini micro games and whether you've played any, or anything else that you feel like saying hello about. You could also reach me, Brendan, at rattleboxgames.com. That's my email address. Well, thank you for joining me today. I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.